The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com. The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. First, the lead stories. The United States wants Guyana's tendering process to be reformed. The chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative is warning against often selecting the lowest bidder. Regionally, there are mixed reactions among some teachers in Barbados to the reopening of schools next Monday. Antigua and Barbuda's government says the granting of amnesty to foreigners who have overstayed is not a political gimmick. Those are the lead stories. The details of these and other stories in a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
Now the news in detail. I'm Ron Robinson. Once again, a very good morning to you. The United States Ambassador to Guyana, Sarah Ann Lynch, on Wednesday cited the need for reforms in several areas, including the tendering system. She made the remarks while participating in a panel discussion on opportunities for cooperation in energy, technology, education and services that was part of the International Energy Conference Guyana.
There's still certainly a lot of work to do to make this a great investment climate, and I think the government should really focus on the tender process and modernizing that, look at tax incentives, looking at a single window. I know there's been some talk about that, so making it easier to navigate the business climate here and setting up a business. So those are just some of my thoughts on making it more friendly.
Currently, the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board is stacked with mostly government supporters and known political activists. The chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, OGCI, Bob Dudley, is warning against often selecting the lowest bidder. The OGCI is made up of 12 of the world's largest oil and gas producers that account for 30% of the world's production. He told the International Energy Conference Guyana that oftentimes the quality of work is poor and the project works out more expensive.
Sometimes procurement processes have unintended consequences. Mandating transparency and tendering, which you spoke about, is a really good thing. But when always selecting the low-cost bidders is the objective, you often don't get where you want to be. You don't get the needed quality. And I have seen it when government officials are investigated for not selecting the lowest bidder. Then fear sets in. And from then on, you always get the lowest bidder and you get poor quality most of the time. The good bidders stop participating. I don't think that's going to happen here.
Mr. Dudley also cautions against taking on the influx of consultants.
In a growth province like Guyana, you will be besieged by consultants. Some have good suggestions. Some proposals will send confusion while you evaluate multiple options and then delay the path forward. And it has slowed down many projects around the world. The good thing in Guyana, again, is I don't sense these things here, and the commitment to growth and moving fast.
Chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, Bob Dudley. Vice President Baradiaglio says Guyana will not be pursuing an international agenda that in the end leaves developing nations like his worse off.
We're not going to get caught up with international prescriptive goals about sustainability because we've seen so many of those come and go. The Millennium Development Goals, reaching some net zero. And often I say prescriptive because although the goals are set in an international environment, often without the developing world at the table, the policies and the financial support to achieve those goals are often lacking. In fact, global policies lead to us not achieving some of the goals, or work counter to achieving the goals.
He suggests that the international agenda is double-edged, citing the role of the World Trade Organization, WTO, in destroying the Caribbean banana and sugar industries.
The Millennium Development Goals were set, and then simultaneously at the WTO, the developed world started pushing for full reciprocity. There was a move to full reciprocity, pushing the world to full reciprocity. That led to the destruction of many sectors. The banana industry in the Caribbean, because it was enjoying some preferences from the European Union, got practically wiped out. The sugar sector here in Guyana saw a loss of about $40 million in one single move in terms of markets. So often the international goals are not aligned with policies practiced at a global level.
Vice President Jaguar says now small countries like Guyana that had never historically contributed to large amounts of greenhouses and climate change are being asked to share the burden of global pollution. A joint venture between 3T Enermec and Orange Oak Development Incorporated Training Center is developing what is said to be Guyana's first training facility for the local workforce to support the country's offshore oil and gas sector. The Enermec Guyana Training Center of Excellence combines in-classroom training, software and technology, and immersive simulators for high-hazard activity learning. It should become the first regional engineering construction industry training board internationally accredited training provider in Guyana. In addition, it will offer what is claimed to be the country's first OPITO-approved basic offshore safety induction and emergency training certification, along with a controlled environment for scenario-based firefighting emergency response training. Orange Oak is also constructing the country's first commercial heliport as part of a wider complex incorporating the new training facility, an aviation marine polytechnic school, and a hotel business center. But now we turn to regional news. First, Barbados. Some teachers in Barbados are not comfortable returning to school on February 21 for face-to-face learning. We get more from Emmanuel Joseph from Barbados Today.
Chief Education Officer Dr. Ramona Archer Bradshaw explained how that flexibility would work as she declared that the Ministry of Education values teachers and principals. Archer Bradshaw said the ministry will accommodate those teachers who do not feel comfortable returning to the classrooms on February the 21st.
We have taken into account what is being said by our unions, and we are flexible enough at this point to allow those teachers the time, that is about 1 week, to settle themselves, to return at a later date.
But newly elected president of the Barbados Union of Teachers, Rudy Lovell, expressed reservations about having some teachers start in-person teaching on February the 21st and others the following week.
Because essentially, one can say it being delayed with the option being given to some teachers who are not comfortable to return. But on the other hand, you cannot have teachers given an option to return when they feel comfortable and still expect the schools to function efficiently.
However, President of the Barbados Secondary Teachers Union, Mary Redmond, embraced the phased return to the physical classroom and the flexible arrangements for its members who have been pushing for a delay to the recommencement of the face-to-face classes due to the spike in COVID-19 cases, particularly among those of school age.
The BSTU is satisfied with the provision of the phased return and the flexibility, phased return to face-to-face instruction, and the flexibility it allows. Ignore my dog in the background. For the timing of the return to school by its members and the phased nature of the return of students.
Emmanuel Joseph for Barbados Today.
Republic Bank Limited has terminated its contentious return to work COVID-19 policy for unvaccinated workers. And it has asked the Workers' Union, the Banking, Insurance and General Workers' Union, BIGWU, to withdraw related court matters. A letter dated February 14 from the bank's Senior Manager Group and Employee Industrial Relations Department to BIGWU's Vice President Jason Brown pointed to the bank's decision to terminate the mandatory PCR tests for unvaccinated staff to mitigate the spread of COVID-19, which was implemented on September 6. The policy was terminated officially last week. The Express yesterday reached out to the bank's managing director, Nigel Baptiste, via WhatsApp, who confirmed the contents of the letter sent to the union are accurate. Referring to the court matters, BIGWU has filed against the bank over the now-defunct policy. The Senior Manager Group and Employee Industrial Relations Department of the bank called on the union to reconsider its decision and remove the matters from the court at this time. The letter further suggested that parties engage with a view to amicably resolving the two residual issues, namely the union's request to have warning notices rescinded and removed from the personnel files of those, along with the reimbursement of the funds extended or expended by staff who would have paid for PCR tests over the life of the policy. In his response to the letter, BIGWU's Vice President Brown stated it's unfortunate such sentiments could not have prevailed prior to the effecting of a policy which translated into emotional and financial hardship for so many. Brown said about 250 employees remain unvaccinated. However, he said the union is always willing to engage in meaningful consultation and will therefore seek accommodation at its next scheduled negotiations meeting tomorrow to begin some preliminary discussion. In Trinidad, relatives of a national detained at the Chaguaramas heliport are demanding answers. Andre Daniel was one of 3 nationals aboard the pirogue where a Venezuelan baby was tragically killed last Sunday. Daniel's family wants authorities to either release him or lay charges. CNC3's Otto Carrington tells us why in this report.
When 39 people boarded a vessel from Tocopito on Saturday, the 5th of February, there were 3 TNT nationals among the group of Venezuelans. It has been over 8 days since they have been held at the Chaguaramas heliport. Now the relatives of these nationals want to know their fate. Since the incident, 35 Venezuelan migrants have been repatriated to Venezuela. Speaking to CNC3 News, the mother of 32-year-old Andrea Daniel, one of the TNT nationals, says she has only been able to communicate with her son via his lawyer. Marcia Williams says there has been numerous attempts to get answers from the authorities, but without success.
If he's not being charged, why he cannot be released for whatever purpose? If they have nothing on him, if for being detained is over 48 hours and it's crossed 48 hours, so we can change. And yet still, nothing is being transpired. Why is he still there? Why do they still have him?
Daniel, who is from Mova, was part of the crew on the vessel and is currently held along with the captain and another sailor on the pirogue that was illegally entering Trinidad and Tobago. His mother says he's a construction worker and admits that she's not aware of his activities on the sea. She says her son has an 8-week-old baby and they are worried.
I'm not comfortable at all because I don't know if he is healthy, if he is eating, what's taking place. So I am not too sure as to what is happening with him right now. I'm not getting no answers.
The incident has brought Trinidad and Tobago into the international limelight after the Coast Guard opened fire on the vessel, killing a baby and injuring his mother. Daniel is being represented by attorney Kyle Cox, and CNC3 understands he has only been interviewed by police officers about the shooting. His mother says she attempted to see her son at the Chagrams heliport, but was barred.
When I found out that he was there, when I went, they tell me he's there, but I can't see him.
And the reason for that?
They have no reason. They just say, I can't see him. I can't see him. I can't talk to him. Nothing. So I don't know.
Investigations are continuing into the matter. Otto Carrington, CNC3 News.
Antigua and Barbuda's Immigration and Foreign Affairs Minister Chet Green is hitting back at critics who deem the upcoming amnesty for immigrants to be a political ploy by his government. Green, during his budget speech presentation on Tuesday, spoke to the importance of granting amnesty to those who have been in the country for years and have been continuously contributing to its growth. Antigua Observer reports that he mentioned that far too many times families have been shortchanged due to gaps in the system. Green went on to say that with the increasing need for a larger labour force due to a rise in developmental projects, it is a no-brainer to help migrants who abide by the laws of the land. Applicants who have resided in the country for a continuous period of 4 years but who have not yet completed 7 years will be granted residency, while persons who have gone over that 7-year mark will be cleared to citizenship. The Gaston Brown-led administration on several occasions has offered amnesty to immigrants who have overstayed their prescribed time, and in 2021 the Prime Minister hinted that they would be offering an amnesty again in the new year. That news was corroborated in Cabinet a few weeks ago, with the government saying that they would even waive fees to regularize the status of indigent illegal immigrants. In considering whether an application for amnesty should be granted, the Cabinet would look at whether the applicant has any criminal convictions, his or her family ties in the country where applicable, and any other information it deems relevant to the application. The amnesty period will run from March 1 to April 30. And now for international news, we join the BBC World Service.
I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. France and its allies have agreed on a coordinated withdrawal from Mali, where they've been fighting a jihadi insurgency for nearly 10 years. A statement issued jointly with European allies and Canada said multiple obstructions by Mali's ruling military junta were making it impossible to operate there. President Emmanuel Macron of France explained the reasons for the withdrawal.
We cannot stay engaged militarily side by side with the de facto authorities with whom we do not share strategy nor objectives. That's the situation we're dealing with in Mali today. The fight against terrorism cannot justify everything and must not, by using a pretext of being the ultimate priority, turn into an exercise of indefinitely maintaining power. It also cannot justify an escalation in violence by using mercenaries whose violent acts are documented in the Central African Republic.
Ukraine and Russian-backed separatists in the Donbas region have accused each other of firing across the line of contact in eastern Ukraine. The Ukrainian military denied launching an attack and said pro-Russian forces had shelled a village and hit a kindergarten. There are no reports of any casualties. Ceasefire violations are common in the region, but there are concerns any escalation could become a pretext for a wider war. From Kiev, here's James Waterhouse.
We've had reports from the Ukrainian military in the east. They've accused Russian separatist militants of launching a mortar shell on a kindergarten in Luhansk, in the area that is under Ukraine's control. No word yet on whether children were inside. We've got reports of 2 people sustaining injuries. But there are inspectors there from what's called the Organisation of Security and Cooperation in Europe, and they're saying they are seeing an increase in shelling in the area. In turn, these Russian-backed militants have accused Ukraine's military of launching mortar shells and artillery at them over the past 24 hours. So there is an increase in tension.
A major historical review by academics and experts from Indonesia and the Netherlands has determined that the Dutch military engaged in what it describes as the systematic and widespread use of extreme violence during Indonesia's struggle for independence in the 4 years to 1949. Anna Holligan reports.
Torture during interrogations, executions of imprisoned soldiers and civilians, and setting fire to homes were among the tactics deployed by the Dutch in an effort to regain control of the former colony. The review found the Dutch government at the time condoned the brutality and that the Netherlands has since never fully acknowledged the scope of its responsibility. Around 100,000 Indonesians and 5,500 people associated with the colonial power were killed. 2 years ago, the Dutch king, Willem-Alexander, expressed his regret.
BBC News. The BBC has uncovered shocking examples of an apparent culture of denial and complicity within the Roman Catholic Church in Italy, which campaigners say has contributed to a failure to address sexual abuse. 3 years after the United Nations said the country should launch a public inquiry, there's been no progress, despite growing calls for action. The Vatican's top official on abuse has said awareness and urgency on the issue does not exist in Italian society. The trial of a Russian research scientist accused of spying for Moscow while working in Germany is beginning today in Munich. German prosecutors say the scientist, identified as Ilna N., shared information about Europe's Ariane space rocket program in exchange for almost $3,000. He's alleged to have met a Russian agent at least 3 times. Police in China are searching for 3 people who were on the run after COVID cases were discovered among their group on arrival from Hong Kong. Cash rewards are being offered for any information leading to arrests. Robin Brandt reports.
Officials in the border city of Zhuhai say a group of 15 people arrived by boat in the early hours of Monday. Authorities fear the group has brought COVID into the mainland after 4 of them tested positive within hours of arriving. Hong Kong is in the midst of a 5th wave of the virus as it deals with outbreaks that are stretching its healthcare system. Mainland China has stringent measures in place to monitor and contain COVID as part of what it calls its zero COVID strategy, including at least 2 weeks of strict quarantine for almost all entrants.
13 women and girls in northern India have died after falling into a well during a wedding ceremony. A slab they were sitting on collapsed as they took part in the ritual in a village in Uttar Pradesh state. 3 others are being treated for injuries. BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, the lead stories once again. The United States wants Guyana's tendering process to be reformed. The chairman of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative is warning against often selecting the lowest bidder. Regionally, there are mixed reactions among some teachers in Barbados to the reopening of schools next Monday. Antigua and Barbuda's government says the granting of amnesty to foreigners who have overstayed is not a political gimmick. The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.